Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar. My name is Konstantin Krivopustov. I'm product manager of Jmix, and today we'll be talking about the new Jmix version 1.4. Could you tell me why I hear the echo from the YouTube? Sorry guys. Okay. First, we'll explore the new Flow UI subsystem, its differences from the classic UI, its advantages, and its current state. Then we'll look at various improvements in the framework and Studio. After that, I'll tell you about our future plans, and at the end, I'll try to answer your questions. You can ask questions at any time in the chat, and we'll go through all of them in the end. So let's begin with Flow UI. It's a new Jmix UI subsystem based on the latest Vaadin Flow framework, version 23. It's an alternative to the classic UI, which is, as you probably know, is based on Vaadin version 8. What are advantages of Flow UI? First of all, you can build responsive web applications that look equally well on desktop and mobile devices. And you don't have to make a lot of additional efforts for that, like writing media queries in CSS. Secondly, you will have deep links for all use of your application. A deep link is a URL which uniquely identifies a view and its state. So users can copy, paste, and share the links to particular views. By the way, in Flow UI, we now use the term view instead of screen. So the entity browser screen is called list view, and edit screen is called detail view. Another advantage is easy integration of third-party web components and creation of your own UI components. Because there is no GWT under the hood anymore, and you can use a modern front-end stack for this task. Also, you will have direct access to the browser's DOM right from the Java code, which can greatly help in UI customization. And of course, Vaadin Flow is in active development. It has a vibrant community, great documentation, and you can find a lot of information about it on the internet. So now let's look at the Flow UI in action. Here you can see the onboarding application from our tutorial, but with Flow UI. Let's open user detail view, and if I change the browser to it, the view will adapt accordingly. First, it turns to one column, then the drawer with the main menu hides, but you can open it when needed. And finally, it's a mobile view, but it still looks good and it is fully usable, fully functional. And I didn't make anything special to make this for this responsive behavior. It's built with standard components, almost like in the classic UI. But sometimes to make a view responsive, you need to design it a bit differently from the classic UI. Look at this view. It contains two panels, each with some default height. In the same screen of the classic UI, you will see two tables with full 100% height. They're stretched vertically. But the non-100% height here is exactly what allows the view to be responsive. With the full height, it wouldn't work because there would be just no free vertical space for this second panel to move to the bottom. So take it into account when designing your views. Probably you should avoid using 100% height or use it carefully. You can notice that there are no more inner tabs in the application, but users can open views in new browser tabs using the standard browser menu, context menu as in any website. And each view has its own unique URL, and the browser history works well. This is the standard and recommended way of opening views, called navigation. But navigation has some drawbacks. You can pass parameters to be opened by navigation only in the URL, like this identifier, so as strings. And you cannot get any results back from a view after it is closed. That's why Jmix gives you one more way of opening views in dialog windows. It is used automatically when you open a list view for entity lookup. For example, here, you can see the same user list view, but opened in a dialog. And this dialog mode is automatically propagated further to open views. By the way, dialogs look correctly on mobile devices too, thanks to Vaadin. Okay, now let's look at how to open views programmatically using Jmix API. Here on this view, you see two buttons. The first one opens the department list view by navigation, and the second one opens the same departments list view in a dialog window. Let's switch to the ID and look at the source code. This is the view descriptor. And the first button, navigate to view handler. It uses the view navigators bin. It's a fluent interface. So we define what view to open by its class and call this navigate method. This method has no return value. So you cannot interact with the opened view in any way. You can only pass parameters to it with using this method with query parameters, with row parameters, and these parameters will be passed in the URL. The second button, open view in dialog, it's click handler uses the dialog windows bin. Again, it's a fluent interface. We want to look up this entity with using some view class. It's the same view, departments list. But now we can set a handler to get selected entities. We can set a close event handler, and we can find out how the view is closed. So we built this window, dialog window, and the window contains our view. So if we need to pass some complex parameters in the view, we can just invoke methods on the view object. So we open the dialog window and it's displayed in the browser. So that's how the API for opening views basically works in Jmix, using these two different interfaces, view navigators and dialog windows. Now I'd like to tell you about one important difference from the classic UI. I will inject a button here. And let's look at the button class. Jmix button. It directly extends the Vaadin button component. So Jmix button is not a wrapper as in classic UI. It's a Vaadin component itself. And it allows you to have access to all its properties and methods. For example, this get element method gives you access to the DOM tree, to the DOM element, root DOM element of the component. So you can set its properties, attach DOM listeners, and so on. It also simplifies integration of third-party components into a Jmix application. You don't have to create wrappers. You just can use it as this, or create a XML loader and use it in a view descriptor. Now I'd like to show you how to create a UI component from scratch. Just a very simple component, just to give a general idea of how Vaadin and Jmix components work. Every Flow UI project has this front-end folder. Among other stuff, it contains CSS files with custom CSS, which you can use in the project. And I created this JavaScript file. It contains a JavaScript class extending lit element. Lit is for creating web components. And basically, this class is the definition of a web component. Web component registered with this custom HTML tag. So this component has the name property. It is initialized in the constructor, and the render method returns h2 tag with text using this property. I also created Java class, which extends Vaadin component class and has a few annotations. The first one defines the HTML tag, and the second one defines the JavaScript sources. It can also be a Node.js package here. In the constructor, I get the DOM element and set its name property to some value. It's the same name property, which is defined here. So now I can use the component in a view. So I open my sample view, and first I will create component instance, load component, some value for the name property. And I add this component to the root layout of the view. Get content, add component. I will look into the console. It should show some message about how deploy. Yes, here it is. And I go to the browser, refresh the page. Yes, and I see my component here. If we look into the DOM tree, we can see that it's really our web component with a custom tag, with the shadow DOM containing our message. Okay. And the last note about the front end. Again, each Flow UI project will have this Node modules folder. It contains a bunch of Node.js packages downloaded from the internet when you build and run your application. It's quite heavy, about 250 megabytes. And if you use a Visual Designer Studio, it creates a copy of the same folder here in Jmix Screen Designer node modules. So 500 megabytes for a single project seems too much, right? Don't worry. Actually, these folders contain just hard links to the shared repository of Node.js packages maintained by PNPM tool. PNPM, performant NPM, is used instead of the standard NPM if your project has this property in application properties. Vaadin PNPM enable. So in fact, all Flow UI projects on this machine will share the same set of downloaded files, and don't waste your disk space. And just make sure this property is on and don't remove it. Well, now let's go back to the slides and talk about the current state of Flow UI. Its API is stable now, and you can use it for creating new projects without the fear of major incompatibilities in the future. But quite a lot of useful features are still missing. Now you don't have generic filter, no inline editing in data grid, no background tasks input dialog, and of course there is no group table below by main. And the set of add-ons compatible with Flow UI is also quite small. You can use audit add-on with entity log and user sessions, data tools with entity inspector, and all headless add-ons that don't have UI at all, like REST API, OpenID Connect, file storages, and so on. So our immediate plan is to implement all missing core features except group table in the next feature release in February. The majority of important add-ons will get Flow UI in next June. Okay, that's it with Flow UI. Now let's look at other improvements in the framework. A recurrent question on the forum was about additional password validation. So now you can define a bin in your project implementing the password validator interface, and this bin will be used by the standard change password action. If you want to use a custom validation when a user is created, you need to add some code to your user editor or edit screen or detail view in your project. And it is explained in the documentation. Another improvement initiated by our community member is the ability to log records on the database level when loading entities using Data Manager. So the new log mode method accepts the log mode type enumeration, and when working with JPA entities, it leads to executing the select for update statement on the database. Another improvement is about security configuration. Previously, to adjust a security configuration provided by the framework or an add-on, you had to copy the whole configuration code into your project. Now you can just extend it by providing a bin, which is inherited from abstract HTTP configurer, and having a special qualifier. The qualifier value must be a constant defined in the security configuration that you are going to modify. In this example, it's standard security configuration, and we add a custom filter to the standard security filter chain. The new stuff in preview. We created a new module for the future replacement of the Jmix Security OAuth 2 module. The current Jmix Security OAuth module is responsible for authentication in REST API, and it has two problems. First, it is based on the now deprecated Spring Security OAuth project. Second, it supports only the password grant, which is not recommended by OAuth specification. The new Jmix authorization server solves both the problems. It is based on the modern Spring Authorization Server project, and it supports authorization code and client credential grant types. Here is a couple of our recent projects unrelated to the release, but can be interesting to you. The first one is a set of cluster tests that we use to make sure Jmix applications work well in distributed configurations. The project contains a mini framework for managing the Kubernetes cluster, scaling it up and down, and running tests on cluster nodes and collecting results. The second project is an example of using Spring Security Kerberos library for authentication and single sign-on for Jmix applications in Windows domain. Both projects are located in public GitHub repositories, so you can look at them. Now about studio improvements. The first one is easy to spot. In Jmix tool window, the configuration section now displays more items. It shows the main configuration class, additional data store classes, all classes with configuration properties annotations. If you have an idea what else should be displayed on this section, please let us know. And you can notice the beans, the new beans node in the entities. If an entity is used as a parameter or a result of a bean method, this bean will be displayed in this section for this entity. So it helps you to navigate in the project, and it provides a kind of data-centric view of your business logic. Of course, a particular bean can be displayed multiple times for different entities if it works with this entity. And I hope that it will encourage developers to design more specialized and fine-grained beans with a single responsibility principle in mind, because a God object working with all entities of an application will appear everywhere, and it will look annoying and useless. We've been told many times that it's not good that our dependency injection tool generates fields injection. So we've added an option to generate constructor injection in Spring Beans. You can turn it on by this checkbox in the inject dialog, and Studio will create a final field and a constructor parameter. For screens, UI screens and views, it still generates field injection because UI components cannot be injected into constructor. And we decided to keep it as is and don't confuse developers with different types of injection for a single class. So it's only for Spring Beans. Now we can use a wizard to create row-level roles. The wizard first creates a properly annotated interface, and then you can use the add policy actions to generate methods defining JPQL and predicate policies. And the last improvement I would like to tell you about is the ability to have your own project templates. You can build a jar file which contains your templates and publish it into your custom artifact repository. Then you should set the artifact coordinates in this field in the Jmix plugin settings, as shown here on the slide. After that, when you create a new project, you should select your repository, and Studio will download the custom templates artifacts together with standard templates. It will merge both lists into one and display the combined list on the next page of the new project wizard. The documentation contains instructions on how to build this artifact and how to use this feature. Well, we're almost finished. The last topic about our future plans. Please consider them as our intention, not as a promise. They're not set in stone and may change along the way. Our immediate plans for the next feature release in February is to expand Flow UI core functionality and to make it comparable in features with the current classic UI. We're also going to provide Flow UI modules for multi-tenancy and BPM add-ons. First, without the BPM runtime designer, you will be able to create processes in Studio and run them in the application. In Studio, we are going to provide a simplified way to create UI for entities and attributes. Something like drag and drop from Jmix tool window from entities right onto the screen designer. In the next 4 months, by June, we are going to upgrade the framework to the latest versions of Spring, Springboot, and Vaadin, and to develop Flow UI modules for the majority of important add-ons like reports and maps. And the next October release probably will be working on group in data grid in Flow UI, and what else we'll decide later. Please share your ideas on the forum. It will help us to prioritize our work. Thank you very much for your attention. Let's look at the questions. My colleagues already helped me to answer some of them. That's good. Okay, I'll try to read them out loud. Is it going to have autocomplete for roles? Any soon? Yeah, if you mean autocomplete for role level roles in GPQL policy editor, yes, it will be done in the next patch release in 1.4. I really like the view tabs inside one browser tab instead of multiple browser tabs as shown. Is there a way to have such behavior? Yes, Gleb already answered that it's hard to achieve together with proper navigation and browser history support. But we will consider this. Maybe there will be some, I don't know, trade-off. Will you have any updates to the Cuba migration process? Do you mean any additional features for migration, perhaps? No, we don't have such plans. Maybe just bug fixing in the process, but it's quite difficult to to do it perfectly, because there are too many variations of projects, and so we did just the basic copying of the code and replacing the known components, and the rest should be done manually. But if you have any concrete problems with migration, please report them on the forum, and we'll try to fix them if there are bugs. Can one mix Classic and Flow UI? To use Flow UI for data entry and Classic to be able to have maps in same application. Unfortunately, the Classic UI and Flow UI cannot work in a single application. So we are going to provide some examples of how you can integrate different applications. For example, working with the same database. So you would be able to maybe migrate your application step by step by creating a new application and moving the logic to it, but still to have some integration on some level between the old and new application. But it will not be in the same app. How about migration from Classic UI to Flow UI? Again, the set of components is different, and the layout rules also quite different. So there will be no exact migration is impossible, and probably you know that Vaadin has no any tools for migrate from Vaadin 8 to Vaadin Flow. So no automatic migration. Is it possible to limit visibility for screen components in Vaadin 23? Probably you are talking about the feature, the Kubo feature, UI components permissions. It is absent in Jmix at all, in Classic UI and in Flow UI, of course. But we will consider to re-implement in Jmix in the future. And if we do it, we'll do it both for the Classic and the Flow UI, because it has almost no difference. So, if there are no more questions, then thank you again for joining our webinar, for your questions. I hope I didn't disappoint you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.